Greetings, welcome to Spun Together. My name is Buddy. I'm coming to you from Virginia, my own little corner here in the Roanoke Valley. The name of my show is Spun Together. The reason for that name is all the arts and crafts that I do, I have to spin those together to keep my mind sane. It helps me from overthinking, which we all know is bad for our health. It keeps my hands limber, keeps them motivated, gives them something to do. And the reason I'm doing a podcast is I want to share with you what I'm doing. I'd like to hear what you're doing. And a couple of people had asked me to do it. Please be nice, be kind. This is my intro, my first video. Well, the first video that anyone's seen my face on. Some of the things I will be talking about will be a little bit of crochet, quite a bit of knitting, some sewing, quilting, and painting. My sewing and quilting journey, I've been doing it all my life. My mother taught adults how to sew, so I grew up with it. She would always have someone that she was showing how to do a new technique with, or how a pattern would go together. She had had professional training in her youth, her early 20s. I had professional training in my early 20s. I was a tailor until I moved to this part of Virginia. Quilting, my mother came to collect my brother and myself from my grandmother one day, and my little brother was asleep between the pillows at the head of the bed. My grandmother was sitting at the foot of the bed, and I was in the middle. I was 4 years old, and I just pieced my first 9 square. So they have both been a part of my life the whole time I've grown up. As far as crochet, my mother taught a lot of people how to crochet. She's had several patterns published. And as far as the knitting, she learned to knit when I was small. She never had interest in it until just one day out of the blue, she decided she wanted to learn to knit. And I would sit across from her and watch her. Everything she would do with her right hand, I would see it with my left hand. So I learned to knit continental style at a very young age, before my teens. So everything that I do, I've grown up doing. My mother also used to do a lot of painting, and I got that from her, as well as her sister, Caroline. So I've always had some form of arts and crafts to rely on. It's been my escape and my tranquility for years. I've won awards with my quilts. I've sold quite a few. I've also won awards with my paintings, and I've sold quite a few of those as well. I made the transition from oils and acrylics to watercolors about a decade ago, mostly because of allergies. Something about the cleaner and some of the oils just in general. Plus, I had a cat at the time, and she liked to get into everything. So it was a very much needed transition. Let me show you a few of my watercolors, and I will dive into more at a different date. And I love doing just see what the colors are going to do on a background, as far as like a sky and a distant mountains, and then add a silhouette in front of it. This is the technique I'm talking about. Just simple blending colors, see what happens, add a little texture, and then add your silhouette to the back. I also enjoy playing with colors like wet on wet, where the object would be wet either with water or additional paint, and then you just flood it with a brush loaded full of pigment that's already been wet down and ready to go. And I enjoy painting moody scenes. The scenes that I like, if it casts some form of mood to it, Whether pleasant or unpleasant or just dark and mysterious, I enjoy painting moods. I also enjoy working with detail. It may be the whole painting or it may be just one aspect of the painting. For this one, it was the mask in general. That was my detail for that, and the rest were just there to support it. And I'm not a botanical artist. I wish I were. I'm a very tight when it comes to painting, but a botanical artist is extremely tight. They have to have every detail just perfect. So this is my rendition. By no means perfect, by no means would it be considered botanical. Some of the other things that I enjoy doing, like I said, my mother taught crochet. Her grandmother taught her how to crochet lace when she was small. So my mother's thing was lace, doilies, anything of a finer weight yarn. I think the biggest she ever used was maybe a DK, but this is an ode to her. It's just a simple little doily. I used the crochet threads, number 10, with one of her old needles. This is the pattern that I used. It's an older pattern I've made several times. It has different sizes that are based according to the weight of thread that you use and the size needle. Okay. And that's going to bring us into quilting. It's another passion that I've had growing up, and this was my last award-winning quilt. It is a 108-inch square. So, there is no way that I can get it all on one screen. I am no longer able to do large works like that physically. There are a lot of health concerns, as we all have, but I am very limited as far as movement, both with my whole body as well as with my hands. That's why I need to keep my hands busy. I do have advanced neuropathy, non-diabetic advanced neuropathy, and I have a lot of muscle memory I do not want to lose. As far as drawing, I am nowhere near where I used to be, but I can still manipulate a paintbrush, so I try to keep that going. Knitting, it's easier for me to manipulate the needles than it is for me to manipulate a hook. And let me show you a few of the things that I've knit lately. This blanket, it's just a simple 10 stitch square, 12 rows of each. It's 60 by 90. It barely hangs over the edge of a queen size mattress. For the edging, I've got just your simple garter stitch border, 5-stitch garter stitch border, and a 15-stitch seed stitch around the very edges. It's also called a moss stitch. Both are considered correct. And I love to play with color. So the Afghan that I've got is 48 by 60. I do like the chevron pattern. It's quick and easy. This is out of a DK weight. I do not remember the brand, but I think the colorway is Nifter. The gray one is made out of Pound of Love. I used 2.5 skeins of it. Other things I enjoy knitting are shawls. The shawls that I like to knit are more of like a scarf. I'm not one into the big schlankets. I like one that can be worn as a scarf. And one of my favorite patterns is just the basic boomerang pattern. And I found this one. I cannot remember the pattern maker's name or the name of the pattern, but you'd start with casting on just so many stitches, and after so many rows you would increase using eyelets as part of the increase, and it works up very quick, very satisfying. It's all garter stitch. I really, really like the way that she does the bind off on it. It's a super stretchy bind off. It's a published pattern, so I can't go into detail, but it's my go-to for circular bind off. To make the pattern more of my own, I decided I was going to change it up just a little bit. I added to the cast on stitches, and instead of just everything in garter, I wanted to do some form of lace. So what I have here is just your basic eyelet lace, and that was my section. I had an increase before and an increase after, then added my band. This one has gotten a lot of wear, a lot of compliments. I've made several for other people out of it. Now I also enjoy making hats. My basic hat pattern is the Ross hat, and everyone knows Ross from Smells Like Yarn. It's the hat pattern that he came up with, his own design. I use that as my basic, just beginner, the starter formula, if you will. For that, I used the same yarn. This is Loops and Threads. I think it's Impeccable. I'm not sure about that. In the purple and the gray, it's a 50% wool, 50% acrylic blend. So I increased the stitch count. I did not decrease as far in as he asked for on the pattern, so I left it so it would scrunch up just a little bit in the middle. Add a little detail for the band to make it more of something that I would wear. It's semi-slouchy. It's a little bit on the looser side. If you wear glasses, you'll understand why looser is better. Because if it's too tight, your ears get pushed in. Next thing you know, you've got a headache from your ears pushing your glasses, and it's just not pleasant. And with that being said, my next two I enjoy making are the asymmetrical. The basic pattern will have you just start at small edge. You'll cast on just a few stitches. You'll do a knit front and back, yarn over, and then on the other end it's going to be a knit two together. And you start out small, and it keeps increasing and getting larger. I like to add some detail to my shawls. This one is just a basic eyelet here and there, and this is more of the lacier eyelet. I like to do a follow-up with the garter at the end, just to keep everything from rolling, keep it from turning under, and just a nicer, cleaner look. From there, I went, this was Loops and Threads Wool-like. It's their sock yarn. It's a number 1 weight. I think I used a size 4 or a size 6 needle on this. For this one, it's the Amazing Lace by Lion Brand, and they called it a number 1 weight, but it took 2 to 3 strands held together to equal a 1 weight, so it was definitely more of the lace side. It was an acrylic, polyamide, and nylon blend. It's super soft. Starts out very small, keeps increasing and increasing. Just a few eyelets here and there, just to scatter across. Went back to garter stitch, did my main section with the garter, and then added my 2x2 lace. That was knit 1, knit 2 together, yarn over, and knit 3 rows, and then repeat the knit 1, knit 2 together, and then end it again with the border of just plain garter stitch. It wraps around very nicely. It's warm, it's snug, and I had enough left to do me another hat. This one is my slouchy beanie. Again, I ended before I closed the circle up so I could have that little bit of poof to it. This one I used 200 stitches on a size 0 needle, which I'm not sure what that is in the metric. This was a size US 4 3.5 millimeter needle for the shawl part. For the slouchy, it fits very well. Even if I have my hair twisted up inside, it still holds and not tight, does not pull, and very comfortable. The other things that I enjoy knitting, I enjoy doing mitts. I use the World's Simplest Mittens from Tin Can Knits. And what I've done is, instead of knitting the entire mitten, I've come just so far up. I stopped here. It's about maybe 10 rows of the hand part, and then I added my 1x1 rib. And for the thumb, I think it was 2, maybe 3 rows here in the thumb, and then I did about 5 rows of 1x1 rib and just a very stretchy bind off. These were made out of Peyton's Croy. They're sock yarn, charcoal color, I believe. Speaking of sock yarn, I am also a sock knitter, as I think probably most knitters are now. For me, the heel flap and gusset are the best fit, as well as the wedge toe. My second toe is almost as long as my first toe, as my big toe, so that fits me the best. But I do enjoy the heel flap and gusset. I like the crew length, not too tall, not too short. So either crew length or shorties is what I prefer. I usually do about 40 to 45 rows between the end of my gusset and the beginning of the toe. That just gives me the extra fit that I like. It's not too snug, not too loose. I let the yarn determine exactly how many rows I need. Sometimes it takes a couple extra rows, sometimes it takes a couple less rows. A couple of things that I have on my needles. Currently, since we're talking about socks, I'm working on a shorty sock. This one I'm going to have a 4/0 heel in. The red yarn here, that is where the heel is going to go. It was 15 rows of rib, 10 rows of stockinette. Then I slipped 2 stitches from one side of the half, knit in the red waste yarn, and 2 stitches on the other side of the half. That way when I take the needles to pick up for the heel, I can just pull out a couple of threads of the red and slide the needle in the stitch, pick out a couple and slide the needle into the stitch. For this, I am using 2 24-inch. These are my Chalgu needles, which I was very fortunate. I had won a giveaway, and this was one of the things that I purchased from that winnings. When I mark, I use an odd color marker to indicate where that starts on one side, so I'll know where the row that I start to count on. Every 10 rows, I'll place a marker. For these, I do not wear shoes in the house, so I like to wear my house socks. So I'm making these with a 68 count, and I went 80 rows where normally I would go 75. I wear a size US 10 to 10.5 in a men's shoe, and this will give me just a little bit extra length so that when I run them through the washer and the dryer, I don't have to worry about them shrinking too much, but I do want them to shrink just enough that it does not feel like I've put a fresh pair of socks on and they're not stretched into place yet. I want them to feel comfortable because I'm just wearing them around the house. But I want them small enough that I can wear them with my boots during the winter time. I really don't have a pattern to go by for these. It's just a vanilla sock that I've adapted. I've made it so many times that it's just my standard vanilla sock for me. One of the other things that I'm working on, I'm also making a cardigan. For this one, I am one sleeve done, one sleeve and the band to go. Stand up. I started right here, right before the underarm joins. I worked my way up and I did a reverse stockinette for the shoulder. I got right in here, I had short row, another short row, and another short row. I continued the reverse stockinette so that I could have that back yoke separated from the rest of it, and then I went back to my standard stockinette to about right here, added the stitches needed in between to connect the two, and I was able to get the whole thing from side to side. I did my pockets first, and that way as I was knitting across, I could join the pockets. You can't really tell where they're seamed in because they're just sort of knit as part of it. And then when I got to the end down here, I was able to remove the waste yarn and just knit it like you would knit with a 3-needle bind-off type, except it was knitted. I would have the pocket on one needle, the sweater on one needle, and I would knit it onto one single needle, joining the two as I would go. The one thing I am going to have to work on is the sleeve. As you can see, it's a little bit baggy. I do have it marked every increase. Since I'm highly modifying this pattern, I think I'm going to tink back to about right below the elbow and start narrowing it a little bit more. But I do wear my sleeves pushed up. So that's where I'm debating because it fits really good here. So that's part of the debate that I've got for that one. That pattern, highly modified from the Adrian Dreams. Is it Adrian? Yeah, Adrian Dream Cardi. And for her pattern, it is a seamed pattern. And I've made this a few times for my mother. And she did ask me to make her another one. And she wants blue long sleeves. When your mother's 92 and she asks for something, you just say, yes, ma'am. That is housed not in a project bag, but in the knitting basket that my grandmother gave me in my teens. And when I got it, all the fabric was falling apart. So this is some, I think I used it for drapes and just lined it. I followed the old cover, inch by inch, put the pockets in the same place. I even put the hold tab. And the way the old ones work, you put it through, pull it up, and that's how you carry it. I don't know if the newer ones do that now or not. Then to use it, just simply slide it apart and it's ready to go. So, that's just a few of the things. The yarn that I'm using for my sweater, I'm using Pound of Love in the colorway of Charcoal. I know it's out of focus. And those I am knitting on a size 8 knitting needle. I'm using the circular, just going back and forth. But when you've got that many stitches on one needle, you don't want to have a straight needle because it will pull on one end, and that'll give you the looser stitches on the end. This is my first video. Again, the name of the channel is Spun Together, because everything we do through life, we spin it together to become part of us. For me, the arts and the crafts, I need to spin those together in my life. Otherwise, I'd be insane, which may not be a bad thing, unless I'm already insane, which is possible. I'm not sure yet. But it keeps me from worrying a lot, and I am a worrier. So the channel name is Spun Together. I am Buddy. If you'd like to leave a comment, please give a thumbs up. I also have an email address. It's spuntogethercrafts@gmail.com. That's spuntogethercrafts@gmail.com. And let me know what you'd like to see more of, what I need to improve on, and any positive, non-hurtful critique. Think of it as, how would you want someone to say something to you? How would you want to be addressed? And put yourself in my shoes, especially since all this is just ramblings of a old madman. Thank you, and you have a blessed day. Bye.